everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to show you a book haul that happened earlier this month because a local library of mine was having a book sale on secondhand books. So a lot of these books aren't in great condition, but each of them were either 75 cents or 50 cents, and I got 12 of them. So here we go. The first book I have to show you is The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I have really wanted to read this book forever, but I wasn't 100% sure about it because I really didn't know what it was about, and the title just sounded intriguing. But I was like, okay, at this bookstore it's 75 cents, so might as well pick it up and try it. So I'll probably be reading this at the very beginning of 2015. The second book I have to show you is The Darkest Fear. I just read the back of this book and it sounded really interesting. It said, Myron never saw it coming. A surprise visit from an ex-girlfriend is unsettling enough, but Emily Downing's news brings him to his knees. Her son Jeremy is dying and needs a bone marrow transplant, and from a donor who has vanished without a trace. Then comes the real shocker. The boy is Marian's son, conceived the night before her wedding to another man. Staggered by the news, Marian plunged into a search for the missing donor, but finding him means cracking open a dark mystery that involves a broken family, a brutal kidnapping spree, and the FBI. The next book I have to show you is To Kill a Mockingbird. I read this in 8th grade, so when I was about 15 years old, and I'm almost 20 now. I really enjoyed it when I read it in class because my English teacher made it really enjoyable because he explained a lot of things in depth that happened. I felt like a lot of the kids in our class really didn't like the way he was explaining it, but I did because I kind of understood it, and I just really enjoyed this book, but I barely remember anything of it because it has been 5 years, so I was like, hey, this is 75 cents, I'm going to pick it up. The next book I have to show you is Blood and Gold by Anne Rice. So I've read one Anne Rice book. It's called The Interview with the Vampire. That was very famous one of her books about Lewis and he got turned into a vampire by Lestat, one of her most famous vampires. And so I was like, sounds cool, and from what I can tell, it's not. She has a few series from her books, and as far as I can tell, it is not part of a series, so I didn't pick up the third book. The next book I have to show you is Salem's Lot by Stephen King. So I know a lot about Stephen King, but I have only read one of his books. I read it this summer. It was called The Running Man. And I really liked it. It was shorter, I don't want to pick, right now, I don't want to pick up any of his giant books like Under the Dome. I just want to find quick ones that seem more simplistic than a really complicated mind twister. So I picked up Salem's Lot because it is, this copy at least, is 427 pages. So not that bad. The Running Man was 300-ish pages, so the next book I have to show you, and the next book, and the next book, and the next book, is The Player of Games. So the back just sounded interesting, and the cover's kind of intriguing, the silhouette of a man. Is it a ghost story? I'm not sure. It says on the back, the culture, a human-machine symbolistic society, has thrown up many great game players, and one of the greatest is Greg, the player of games, master of every board, computer, and strategy. Bored with success, Greg travels to the Empire Azad, cruel and incredibly wealthy, to try its fabulous game, a game so complex, so like life itself, that the winner became emperor. So it sounds like another worldly kind of like risking your life. So the next book I have is a very famous classic that I have had on my reading list forever but have not yet read, A Separate Peace. I was not looking for this book like in the piles because literally there was no separations of genre except for children's books and adults books. It was just tables upon tables of random books, and you had to come across luck of the draw. But a neighbor that also came to the book sale, she said, "What have you got?" And I showed her my pile that I had accumulated at that point, and she goes, "Read this, A Separate Peace." I have heard so much about this. It is a very famous classic about World War II, and it's very simple writing. It doesn't look like it's going to be like a complicated, difficult read. And when I got back to my mom, because she was getting books as well, and she was holding the bag that we were sharing to put books in, she's like, that was one of my favorite books. Next book I have, I just picked it up because of the title, and I was really excited to read it because I can't come across much literature. I'm sure I have great grammar in that sentence. It's called Coming Out, an Anthology of International Gay and Lesbian Writings. So it sounds like, from the back and from the title, that there are a bunch of short stories by LGBTQ authors. I'm just flipping through it a little bit here. Great Britain, To Get Rid of Programmed Training, Italy, Patterns of Sexual Repression. So it sounds like there might be short stories or like just different things about, I guess, alternative sexualities. So minority sexualities, I should say. The next book I have is Full Tilt. I read this book about 3 years ago, and I am not kidding you when I say I have probably thought about this book every week since I've read it. A friend let me borrow it. It is about an older brother that is like 16 or 17, and his younger brother who's like 12 or 13, and they go to a carnival, and if I remember correctly, when they get back from the carnival, the younger brother gets sick, and then for some reason the older brother believes that the carnival has something to do with his sickness. So he goes back to the carnival and discovers that his brother's soul has been trapped in the carnival. And the next book I have to show you, I'm getting blocked by all my books, is Naked by David Sedaris. Some of you may have heard of him. He's a very famous comedic writer. He has written so many books. I'm currently reading right now, I'm not going to read all of it, but it's a collection of short stories. I like Christmas-themed short stories. I'm forgetting the name of it. Let's see if I can grab it. Oh, yep. I just didn't, it's under a pile of crap, so I didn't want to mix it up. But it's called Holidays on Ice, and I've read about 3 of the short stories in there, because I just want to give it back to my friend. So, but that has me rolling on the floor laughing, and I read the first sentence in this book, and I'm like, it's living up to his comedic act. So, the next book I have is Catcher in the Rye. This is also a very, very famous classic that has been on my reading list for forever, and I have not been able to read it. This is the second book that my neighbor came up to me. She handed me A Separate Peace in Catcher in the Rye. She's like, read this and read this. So I now am under obligation to read Catcher in the Rye. I have wanted to read it just because I've heard of its reputation. I shouldn't skim. But yes, Catcher in the Rye. And the final book I have to show you today is Among Others. This is a children's book. I wouldn't call it like, 6-year-old children's book, but young teenager children's book. Sounds like it. The back just sounded very interesting. Sounded mystical and magical. Raised by a half-mad mother who dabbled in magic. Morwenna Phillips found refuge in two worlds. So I was like, ooh, magical, because I'm into a lot of adult books, like Dragon Tattoo, Stephen King, Catcher in the Rye, but then I also like to dabble in a little bit of fantasy now and again, fantasy sci-fi. So this is the last book I have to show you. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you later. Bye.